Good evening. I'm Susan Armstrong, your moderator for this evening. I'm with the Missouri Green Party, and I'm a product of the public schools. What is the current state of St. Louis City schools? How would potentially repressive legislation affect education in Missouri? Ongoing problems with the St. Louis public schools are not an accident and would be called failure by design. Programs developed in St. Louis City and North St. Louis County build a strong partnership between local schools and the community through programs including sustainable gardening. Let's also take a look at the status of trade school programs in North and South St. Louis. Your comments are welcome. Please feel free to enter them in the chat and raise your hand. Our first speaker tonight is Susan Turk, the editor of St. Louis School Watch, and is a public education advocate. She will describe the current state of St. Louis public schools. Susan Turk.
Good evening. I'd like to start by informing those of you who may not know yet that the district has just hired a new superintendent, Dr. Keisha Scarlett. She's coming from Seattle, where she's had a 24-year career ranging from teacher up to assistant superintendent for academics. And she has a strong background in raising student achievement. That's going to be crucial for St. Louis public schools because during the 14 years that the SAB and Dr. Kelvin Adams ran the district, academic achievement as measured by the MAP scores dropped 50% in language arts and 60% in mathematics. It's just begun to start crawling back up since the elected Board of Education returned to power 3 years ago. So we've got a lot of hard work ahead of us and a new superintendent to lead the district. The other important thing that's going on at the moment is called the Citywide Plan for Education. This is a project that was initiated in 2022 and is being led by board member Tony Cousins. It's an effort to include the public in creating a plan for what is needed in public education citywide. It includes representatives from charter schools, as well as the St. Louis public schools, and members of the public. They meet monthly. They've been meeting since last April, and their last meeting will be, let me see, the date is March 29th, before a final action plan will be created based on the information collected at all the meetings that they've had. The time and the place of the meeting will be advertised on the district's website, slps.org, probably about a week before the 29th. It's not up yet. One of the things they're trying to do is determine what the correct number of schools is for the city. Because as you know, both the St. Louis public schools and the Archdiocese have been closing schools for quite some time due to the drop in population in the city. And yet new charter schools keep opening. And even the charter schools are losing population, are losing students. And so this plan, this project is trying to come up with an idea that would perhaps stop the opening of more charter schools if we don't need them in the city. And then where schools should be, who needs them, and what kind of schools they should be. The idea is also to create hubs for fulfilling community needs, full service schools. And so again, the last meeting is March 29th, after which a plan will be finalized and shared with the public. The next thing I want to mention is that there's a school board election on April 4th. There are 2 seats open this time. There are 3 people running for those 2 seats. One of them is Tracy Hikes, a retired sheet metal worker and graduate of St. Louis Public Schools. Another is Sadie Weiss. She's a social worker And the third person running is Jermaine Wyndham, Dr. J. Wimbley Mendoza, Haile Sean Mendoza Quinones, Haile Sean Quinones, and Dr. J.L. Quinones. That's all one person. He uses different names at different times for different reasons. He's a sort of a George Santos type of person. So there are 3 candidates for 2 seats, and Tracy Hikes and Sadie Weiss probably wouldn't create much controversy on the board. I'm a little worried about this Quinones person. He's run 2 times before. He doesn't answer questionnaires, and sometimes his answers veracity at public forums is questionable. So the last thing I want to talk about, how much time do I have left, Barb?
You have 7 minutes.
Okay, then I'll mention one more thing about Dr. Quinones. And I'm not sure where he got his doctorate, but he does like to use that. The day after he lost the first election that he ran in 2021, he filed with the Public Charter School Commission a letter of intent to apply to open a charter school. In May of that year, the charter school board told him that they were not interested in him applying because his plan didn't meet their standards. It's pretty hard not to meet the standards of the Public Charter School Commission. They open just about anything. So after that happened, he told people that he was in negotiations with the Charter School Commission. Last fall, when he ran for school board, he was asked at a public forum at Vashon High School, along with all the other candidates, if he'd ever applied to open a charter school or sponsor a charter school, and he said no. That was an outright, well, it wasn't true. In the last couple of months, he's been saying he did not ever try to open a school, that was somebody else. Yeah, it was somebody under one of his other names. But anyway, I mean, when Bill Monroe was also on the stage that night, Bill Monroe has no problem admitting and talking about his efforts to open charter schools. And he's honest and he's forthright about it. I don't know why Dr. Quinones thinks he needs to conceal that. But the 2 other people running, Tracy Hikes and Sadie Weiss, don't seem to have any reason not to vote for them. And I'm done with that. The last thing I want to talk about is Jefferson City, because Jefferson City has an impact on the St. Louis public schools that is unpleasant and usually damaging. The legislature is trying to pass bills this year on school transfers, on anti-LGBTQ issues, on race and parents' bill of rights, and accreditation matters that will really hurt the St. Louis public schools. There are 3 bills that would allow students to transfer from their current school district to any school district they wanted to go to. And they've all either been perfected in the House or the Senate or up on the calendar to be perfected. So they're going to pass in some form. And that would enable a continuation of the outflow of students from the St. Louis public schools. We're down to 18,793 students. We've lost about 1,000 students from last year. And there's just been a slow, steady trickle. DSEG is ending next year. Next fall is the last year that anyone can enroll in DSEG. And if these transfer bills passed, it would mean that there would be a perpetual ability of students to flow out of the district. And quite frankly, we need to retain our kids. And so the bill numbers are SB 5, SB 81, and HB 253. They'll probably all be combined at some point, and they will hurt the district if they pass. Another subject that I think would concern all of you as Greens is the Missouri version of the Don't Say Gay bill. This is SB 134. It's been voted to pass, and so it will likely be adopted, it will pass. It's worse than the Florida bill. It, which only allows restrictions on discussions from K to third grade. This would be throughout the entire time the student is a student up through 12th grade. They don't want any, it prohibits the discussion of gender identity or sexual orientation by any school personnel with a student, unless it's a psychologist or a counselor. And so, in other words, there can be no discussions in literature or history classes or anywhere in the classroom.
We have two more minutes.
Okay. A major, and that bill is SB 134. A major, really damaging bill is SB 4. That's the one that has language in it that says, as a school or no school or school employee shall compel teachers to teach or students to adopt a position or viewpoint regarding race, ethnicity, color, or nation of origin as superior or inferior, or that individuals by virtue of their race, ethnicity, or color bear collective guilt or responsibility for actions committed in the past. If that bill passes, it will in effect shut down discussions on our history of racism in this country. And I can't imagine what that would do in St. Louis public schools. It's just beyond the pale. But it's passed the Senate and it's moved into the House. And I don't know what can be done to stop it, but it's something that we all need to be concerned about. Let's see. There's also a bill that would require all schools and districts, and charter schools for that matter, to be reaccredited every year. It's HB 558. It creates a grade of A through F for all schools within a district. And if a school has this grade of D or F for 3 years, the students are allowed to transfer anywhere, including out of the district. For 4 years, the school can be reorganized as a charter school. After 5 years, the school can be closed. I can't imagine the havoc I can imagine the havoc that would wreak on our district, especially causing the closure of neighborhood schools without necessarily there being any replacement for them, which would render the schools that remained open overcrowded.
I'm afraid
yes.
that's your time.
Okay. So anyway, Jefferson City continues to be a problem for us, and the district is moving forward in a positive way.
Thank you, Susan Turk. Our next speaker is, again, you put questions in the chat or comments in the chat. Our next speaker is Dr. Barbara Anderson. She's a retired St. Louis public school teacher and principal. She will explain that problems with St. Louis public schools are not an accident and could be called failure by design. Dr. Anderson.
First of all, thank you for inviting me to join in the conversation with my heroes and my sheroes. We are all saying the same thing. We know what our problems are in St. Louis public schools. We know what our recommendations are for correcting the problems that have been made. And the only problem is really that happens is that our decisions are being made in the district due to politics and money. And when I say politics and money, we adopted in the St. Louis Public Schools a business model instead of a student-centered model years ago. And we have made most of our decisions based on money and politics. And we have left our children behind. There were, and when I was a baby teacher, we used to have specialists that were assigned to our buildings. We had math specialists, we had reading specialists, we had after-school programs. We had all kinds of resources that were available to our children. And all of that was let go because it costs too much. That's the wrong decision to make. I think that we need to gather our resources around the protection and the education of our children and not worry about budgets. We don't produce widgets. We produce young people. We produce future citizens. And you can't do that based on what? Budgets. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't. As a principal, I got to hear many parents pulling up on the first day of school, and they were very pleasant and pleased and happy to say, okay, I had it for 4 years, now it's your turn. No, we don't raise your children, we teach them. And I'm going to have to bring in that elephant in the room, which is discipline. I'm sorry. We have lost so many educators because our districts tie our hands behind our backs. We say we don't want to contribute to the education, to prison pipeline. Yeah. Just let me share with you, and I'm just saying it like I know it is said from the people that I work with and people that I've watched. When you say to a child, I need to talk to your parents about your behavior, and then they reach into their back pockets and pull out their cell phone to say, call. You're not going to do anything. You can't do anything. That's wrong. If we want to stop the prison to, pipeline, we want to stop that, then we need to teach our young people that there are consequences for inappropriate behavior. And to just tell teachers that you can't suspend the kids. No, the kids, they will look at you very quickly and say, you're not going to do anything to me. You can't do anything to me. Here, call my parents. What you going to do? We have to stop that. We have to reinstill the proper behavior requirements. We have to bring that back, number one. Number two, we have to stop buying into these pre-made programs that are teaching our children. I'm sorry. In 2005, 1 + 1 = 2. And in 2023, 1 + 1 still equals 2. A lot of educators don't believe in what we call, we called it, back in my day, we called it rote memory. They renamed it, and they renamed everything. They renamed it automaticity. I need for children to know things before I can expand their knowledge. Adults 220. I'm sorry. There are some words you just need to know, and having conversations about it doesn't get it done. There are things that we need to demand of our students, and we have gotten away from that. Really? Seriously. When I ask a young person for their parent's name, I don't need them to say poo-poo. I don't need that. I need for the children to have basic information. And we seem to have gotten away from that, and I don't know why. We need to teach our children. We need to teach our children. And we need to get away from this idea that the first thing that you need to do to increase and to improve your education is to leave your neighborhood. Really? When we first started talking about integration and desegregation and all those kinds of things, the first message that we sent out was, you have to leave your neighborhood in order to get a good education. I'm a product of that. When I was a student in St. Louis Public Schools, we had so many students that we had to build what they call portables into our class, not our classrooms, and on our playgrounds. We had to build portables because we had nowhere else to send the kids. When I was a child, having a classroom of 45, 50 kids was not unusual. And we didn't suffer the kinds of discipline incidents that we hear going on nowadays. We didn't suffer that. Students were taught, this is your expected behavior, and this is what you will do. Nowadays, we're going to have conversations with 8-year-olds? No, no. There are rules. There is a discipline policy that must be followed. And we've gotten away from that. And I don't understand why, but I do truly see the consequences of trying to have conversations with 8-year-olds. Really? When I was a kid, your biggest infraction was chewing bubble gum in the classroom or throwing spitballs.
Barbara,
Now
you got
I'm sorry.
2 more minutes. You have 2 more minutes.
Okay, I simply want to say that now we have 5-year-olds who take loaded guns to school. Now we have 6-year-olds who take loaded guns and shoot their teachers. We need to get that back together. We need to get back to teaching the basics, and we need to get back to teaching our children that you're the child, I'm the adult, and we need to teach you to behave appropriately. Inappropriate behavior cannot be accepted. It can't. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Our next speaker is Mitch Pearson. He's a retired he's a retired public school teacher, St. Louis City and County. He will cover how programs can build a strong partnership between local schools and communities through sustainable gardening. Mr. Pearson.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me. Let me get this PowerPoint set up here. There we go. Let me see here. Give me just a second. Here we go. I'm originally from Wichita, Kansas. I moved to St. Louis in 2017. One of the things I wanted to do here was study the Montessori system. But to take a step back, give you a little bit of history, I grew up on a farm right outside of Wichita. I guess we're the original urban farmers, I think. We boarded a Black Cowboy saddle club. We kept about 20 horses on the premises, and I was brought up in that Black Cowboy culture. And that has really served well throughout my career. When I left home back in the early 70s, they should tease me, said there were no Black people that lived in Kansas, and there were certainly no Black cowboys. But now we know the history has proven that not to be the case. I'm a retired educator. I taught K through 6 art half of my career, the second half. And the first half, I taught 5th and 6th grade. And as I reflect on everything, I look at my whole educational journey as from the time when I started school back in 1960. That was not too long after Brown v. Board was the law of the land. What they did, they closed down our segregated school, which is maybe a half a mile from our house. We had to go to school about maybe 2 miles away. And it was they called an integrated school. It was predominantly white with, first, second generation Mexican-American students, African-American, and some indigenous people there. But I soon learned that they didn't really integrate schools. It was just desegregated. What I mean by that is that when you were in the classrooms, they taught you about Patrick Henry and Thomas Jefferson, but they didn't teach you about Sally Hemings or Benjamin Banneker or Crispus Attucks. So we had to learn that at home. So I guess we had to learn the code switch at an early age. I experienced tracking, about the time I was in 3rd grade. I developed this love of art about then, and so I spent most of my time with my friends just drawing a lot. I could get my work done, but after I got my work done, I would draw. When I got to the 5th grade, I was in this teacher's classroom that was known to be a pretty mean teacher. And she told me that if I catch you drawing again, I'm going to put you in the dumb class. And I knew inherently that there was a tracking system there, because on one track where predominantly white students were in, and the other predominantly, children of color. So after I became a professional educator, I knew what that was. And I actually dropped out of school mainly from 5th grade to high school. And it wasn't until college that I kind of got re-engaged and got serious about education. My first recollection of how intertwined public schools are with the general community was when President Kennedy was assassinated. I'll never forget the teachers' looks. Their faces were, it was like they were in shock. This was in 1963. And even today, I remember that whole mood of the schools. In 1965, Malcolm X was assassinated. It wasn't the same feeling that the white teachers had that I got from, President Kennedy. That taught me that there was 2 systems going on. In 7th grade, Dr. King was assassinated. In 1970, we had a big race riot. And that riot taught me something about life. The people that were the law enforcement people were predominantly white. It seemed like they were protecting their own, but they weren't protecting us. In 1973, I missed the draft by 1 month. And that's a whole nother story about the Vietnam War and how poor people were drafted and put on the front lines. It appears to me, after all these years, over 30 years of education, is that democracy, I truly believe, is the linchpin to democracy. But on the other hand, our public education system is antiquated. We need to do something totally different. We need to think in terms of, number one, doubling the teachers' salaries. And number 2, looking at how, children actually learn and give them the resources to learn. This is a we the people government. It ties directly into the public education system. Even as a child, I was always asking myself, why do we treat our fellow citizens so differently? If you live in the right neighborhood, it's a serve and protect neighborhood. You live in the wrong neighborhood, it's law enforcement and policing. As an art teacher, I had to teach 2nd graders. That's when you first start teaching about, skin tone and portraits and all that. And Tony Brown it was called Tony Brown's Journal. I think it was a PBS series. And he would always say that Black and white people is a social construct. So I use that to teach my children at my schools that really take a look at people, look at what they look like. And people don't come in black and white. And one of my conclusions, I have many of them, I believe we need to have a 12-step program to unravel our addiction to this whole notion of white, white privilege, white supremacy, all this. That's That's not helpful at all as we learn to deal with the reality of who we are, the people that we are. I don't even talk about reparations because we have to admit that there was a problem. What to talk about genocide and slavery and how America got so rich in such a short period of time. Let's talk about liberty and justice for all. We started our urban farming work in St. Louis, in the St. Louis region in 2017. And the children really, really enjoyed it. So when we weren't out there in the garden or studying seeds or things doing with planting, we started, creating murals. And they really liked that hands-on activity and making that contribution. We established Phi Global LLC, the Urban Farm School, in 2018. After working in schools around St. Louis, we knew we needed some kind of farming effort program because it's such a child development sensitive process. This is a picture of students who, we actually grew that popcorn. They went from seed to cultivation to harvest, and they learned how to shuck the seeds. And then in October, around Halloween, they sold the popcorn for like 50 cents a bag. So they had all those life experiences all wound up in that project.
Mr. Pearson, you have 2 more minutes.
Wow, okay. Well, I need a whole lot more than 2 more minutes. But anyway, let me go back to this one. This is a summer camp. We hope we can send more children to summer camps.
Are you sharing? Are you sharing your screen?
Yes, you guys can't see it?
No.
Well, I can just talk to you about it. Okay. And in 2019, we sent children to K-State, to a camp, and the pandemic stopped that the next year, but we want to get back into that. In the richest country in the history of the world, 1/3 of our children live in poverty. We've got to sit down and start talking about all of this stuff that's been going on and what's going to go on in the future. One thing that I tell folks, I pose this question. Historically speaking, if it had not been for a Black general, we'd be speaking French in St. Louis. Education, look at all different sides of the educational process. Look at all the different groups of people who share their contribution to American culture, and sit down and get our common bond together is that we the people constitution. I believe that rational, good-willed citizens should sit down at the table and talk about the letters between Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Banneker. Talk about Nat Turner and Denmark Vesey, okay? And I want to close by this, Tyree Nichols, we cannot forget his name. What I saw in that video was jack-booted goons. It was like the face of tyranny looking at us. We're in perilous times, and I think we need to really, what we're doing today is a great step. We just keep pushing forward. And I think our ancestors would be proud of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Our next speaker is Donna Jones. She's a member of the St. Louis City School Board. She will review the status of trade schools programs in North and South St. Louis City.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Donna Jones, and I've been on the board for going on 17 years now. And the reason why I joined is because I had 7 children in SLPS. And one of my sons, he wanted to work on cars, and SLPS did not have a trade school program at the time that my son could participate in. All we ever heard of was North County. And so this is something that has troubled me for a long time, especially coming from one of the highest crime neighborhoods in the city of St. Louis, which is Walnut Park, where I've lived for 27 years. Last night, we had a work session where we discussed the trade schools. We talked about ranking. We talked about, I'm gonna pull this up here. Basically, right now, the program is being run by Dr. Bender, Dr. Maltbia, and Dr. Henning, and it's called College and Career Readiness and Technical Education. And so what has always concerned me, because over the years I've listened to conversations about college and career readiness, but I know as a fact, many of our students, once they go to college, many of them desire to go to college, but usually so many of our students are on free and reduced lunch that the cost of college is prohibitive for many of them. Even for my own family, that was the case. So I really was enthusiastic about the college and career program, but one part that I wanted to see was a trade school. And right now, well, what I've campaigned on was a trade school at Northwest High School. So that's still to be, it's something that's up in the air right now. But I would like to see a trade school in North St. Louis and South St. Louis, and particularly at Northwest, because there's nothing there. And we don't have a high school on the other side of Highway 70. And I have to say that all of these things have been by design, and I cannot say it's by the design of this particular board that we have now. Right now, I have to say that this board is filled with very committed people that really do care and love our students. That I can say with truth and honesty. There was something called Team 4 that was put together back in 1973. And it was a St. Louis City strategic plan. And in the plan was to deny many city services for targeted communities in North St. Louis. And right now, I think we're in the final stages of that targeted site for North St. Louis, because we're virtually cleaned out. I have to say it's cleaned out because I can remember as a child when I was 5 and I lived in Pruitt-Igoe, and I could look from Blewett School. I would stand on the playground and look out, and I could see houses, I could see people, and I remember this quite clearly. And it's one of the things I won't forget. There were people and there were houses and apartments and everything all lined up on the other side of Pruitt-Igoe. And all the way down where Vashon is, there were homes and there were people that we would pass and speak to. There was a clinic. There's now the fire department. So all of these were by design. So you have people like Paul McKee that came in and they bought up these properties and then they sat on them and destroyed neighborhoods. So now we have so many families that are homeless, and we have so many students that don't have what we call homes to go back to. So when I hear people talk about our students being ready for the classroom and what have you, so many of them don't have a home. So many of them don't have anywhere to go. And so what I'm leading up to now is to ask the public to join in and start a PTO at your school. Right now we have, I'll say about 60 schools, and maybe only 16 of them have PTOs. We need parents. Desperately, we need parents to join up and come to the school and become involved, because you see what's happening in Jefferson City. We had students from Central VPA to go up there yesterday to talk to lawmakers about gun violence. And yet, I don't know. I just don't know. Many of our students have come to school. They come to school and they bring guns. They carry guns every day because they're afraid. This is why our students have changed, and they don't care about what they say to the teachers or to their parents or to the neighborhood, because they come from a community that has not given them the proper attention. When we go into our community and our neighborhoods, there's really nothing over here for them to do. I live in Walnut Park and I look down Goodfellow, I look down West Florissant, and there's nothing. There's nothing. If I wanted to take my 8-year-old granddaughter somewhere, there's nothing. There's nothing to entertain them or to really have fun, or for young people or preteens or what have you, or older. So St. Louis Public School is really focusing in right now with with career readiness. We have a program where district employees have partnered up with places like Boeing and Rankin and what have you, and the Learn to Earn program where our students can make up to $12 an hour before they leave high school, and perhaps so they can gain some type of certification before they leave. Another thing that we're working on, and what I would like to see, is our students participating in entrepreneurship, because many of our students come from backgrounds where they really need to have something to fall back on, and that would be themselves by the time they graduate from high school. Last year, I attended actually 11 graduations, because I wanted to look at those students. I wanted to look them in their face and have a good understanding of who it is that we're making policies for, because that's important to me, to know who these children are and to understand their families. And once I looked at those students, I understood the importance of them coming out. They need to have a financial portfolio. They need to understand money. They need to have some type of trade if they want to. They need to have some type of certification other than just going to college, because many of them I know won't be going, and not through them not desiring that. I just want to say that in the classroom now, the classrooms don't have teachers that look like our students anymore. I'm not sure what happened, but we're working on that. And we're really asking our teachers who have retired and persons in the community that are interested in teaching positions to please come and give us a chance, because we are changing. There will be pay increases of 3% next year. There was a recent pay increase for for people who are employed. There will be pay increases for parent liaisons. And we understand that the cost of living is high. So we want people to come back, because we do care about how you feel, about your families, and about the students.
Donna, you have 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes, okay. So I want to give the phone number of our parent liaison. Her name is Gloria Nolan, and her phone number is 314-345-2485. Gloria Nolan has worked with many people. She assisted with parents coming up to Jefferson City and advocating for our teachers, for our students. We also have Miss Waris Blackman Davis. She's in charge of state and federal compliance analysts, and she also deals with parents. Her phone number is area code 314-345-4692. We also have Alana Parks. She is the Director of Family and Community Engagement. Her phone number is 314-345-2884. And these are persons that you will should get in touch with. Reach out to them and see how you can start a PTO at your school. And we're looking for funds so that we can help with the startup cost. So we can, thank you for posting that, so that we can have parent participation. Because like I said before, it made a big difference in my children's lives to see me sitting in the back of the classroom, even though sometimes they didn't like me peeping around the corner. Having parents there to find out what's going on and be an advocate for the students inside the classroom and inside the school helps so much. And for those of you who do this, I thank you so very, very much. And if you can't do it in the classroom, please come out and do it. And I want to thank the young people from Vashon who came out and showed love to those 4 young people that lost their lives at Grand in Forest Park today. We mourn with you on the loss of those students, and their lives are just as important as anyone else in this community. And I really hope that someone will really start raising funds to help those students who are currently in the hospital and are in need of help, as well as those who have funeral costs and what have you. Thank you for listening, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for your commitment. I'm going to ask Miguel and Carla Alexander to comment next.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Miguel is over here. He's just not on camera, but we just want to say hello to you tonight. We want to give a big, humongous thank you to all the soldiers who have been out here and fighting the good fight for public education, first of all. Everyone on this panel tonight, we well respect you. The organizers, we well respect you. And of course, we want to continue to carry the torch to secure public education. We are pretty much, we're not hopeless, but it's very frustrating when everyone on this call, we know what to do. We know what needs to be done. We have educators and, you know, doctors and people that have been in this fight for decades, that they know what works, but we are held, you know, back. And that's the biggest thing. We want to know, is it just about, okay, making sure you get the right people on the board? And like, you know, Ms. Cogshill, she gave a comment, a very important comment. We interviewed most of the people that we wanted on the school board, but when they got on there, they changed. So what do we do with the systematic fight, you know, with the systematic injustices? How do we continue to, you know, work this without any kind of compromise from that type? Because when our candidates, when they run for school board, and I'm not talking about all of them, because Ms. Jones, you are our shero. I'm talking about those persons that get on there and they'll say one thing at a candidate forum and they'll get to the board, and then now it's politics and money and nothing about the community.
Ms. Alexander, you have about 30 more seconds.
Thank you so much. So that is what I want to, and Miguel, we want to know, what do we do to hold our candidates accountable to what they say and what they do? That's why we're having our forum on March 8th, Wednesday, March 8th. It's going to be at Vashon High School, and we're flying in our National Alliance Journey for Justice. Our national organizers will come in and they will talk about this fight that is bigger than St. Louis. It's going to be Wednesday, March 8th from 5:30 to 7:30 at Vashon High School, a public high school rally or public rally for public education. And we invite everyone out. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Alexander. I've got the flyer in the chat for the event that Miss Carla is talking about. So please, we would like to be able to commit 20 people from the Green Party to attend this Wednesday, March 8th rally from 5:30 to 7:30 at Vashon High School Auditorium. I know I'll be attending, absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Alexander, for the invitation and your efforts. I'd like to ask Gwen Cogshell to speak next.
Okay, my name is Gwendolyn Cogshaw. I'm not going to speak right now because I want Mr. Quindoza to take my time and explain some things and answer some questions and, you know, and let people know who he really is. So, Mr. Quindoza, if you're on the phone, can you speak? Please.
Yes, I'm here, Mrs. Cogshaw.
Well,
Can
we
you hear
just
me?
wanted you. Yeah, I
you.
just wanted you. I don't know if you heard what was said about you or whatever, but I just wanted you to clear up some, you know, just let people know who you are and what you stand for.
Okay, not a problem. And thank you. Give me 1 second here. All right, there I am. Good evening to everyone. Good evening. My name is Dr. J.L. Quinones. I am a lifelong St. Louis resident here. I live in Walnut Park currently, where I was born and raised. I am a product of Walbridge Elementary, Ford and King Middle, Northwest High School. I'm a graduate of Howard University. I'm also a very proud member of being a graduate of the U.S. Coast Guard Academy with the rank of ensign. I am now retired as a veteran. I hold credentials in the fields of government and city policy, Master of Arts. I also hold PhDs in human services, theology, divinity, educational leadership, and music composition and theory. I hope that I am credentialed enough to speak this evening, if I may. I also hold superintendent certification through the American Association of School Administrators, that's ASA for most. I have been a teacher in the public schools as well as an athletics coach, a mentor, a district-wide social worker. I am a chaplain. I serve my home church, which is located in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood in South St. Louis City.
Sir, you have about 30 seconds left.
Okay. I heard that there was a lot of speculation. I can tell you this honestly because I do keep receipts. I have never been any part of anything chartered. Someone used my personal information and that of my colleagues. And we found out who it is. And they ought to be ashamed of themselves. But one thing I am here to state is that I am here for the students and the families who have no voice on the board. Our board needs more transparency, more accountability. This is why I've come.
So
thank you.
Thank you. Barbara, I have a question for this recent invitation. How can the voters and the parents hold the Board of Education accountable? When they become directors, how do people hold you and Barbara accountable? You, if you're elected, how would that accountability process work? Please. This question.
Is that a question? Is a question for me?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, thank you. Accountability means that we must be straightforward. We must not be hiding any agenda because there are agendas, whatever you can call it, special interest groups. You can call it charter interest. You can call it whatever you like. But again, when it comes to the dealings of a school district, I've worked in the field of education for over 38 years. I've been a superintendent. I'm an educational consultant. I work with school districts across the globe, period. One thing about accountability is that we must be straightforward about the intentions of the direction of the school district. Flat out, we must be honest. No more hiding, no more backbiting and bickering with each other. We must come together, be unified, be accountable. Be accountable for ourselves, accountable to each other, accountable to the administrators and staff, and the students and their families within the communities that we serve. And accountability must be straightforward.
Thank you for answering that question. Absolutely. Again, you guys put your comments in the chat and we'll pick them up. The next speaker is Daniel Digger Romero. He's a member of the Green Party of St. Louis.
Let's see here. Hello. Yes, can you hear me? You should be able to. Yes, I'm Daniel Romano, also known as Digger. I am a member of the Missouri Green Party and the Green Party of St. Louis, but my opinions I'm expressing here are my own, although I think they do reflect green values. I do work part-time for an agency that puts me in to do residencies part-time in St. Louis public schools. What I am seeing is I studied this issue a lot, and I see charter schools as a way of resegregating schools. Yes, segregation not just by race, but by class. I note that the charter schools, their poor performance, I mean, they just don't perform. If you look at MAP scores or by anything, they don't perform any better than most of them are public schools. As a matter of fact, several of them, many of them have shut down, like sometimes in mid-year, forcing students to go back to the public schools and seeing their school that they went to shut down. This is part of, there's a national effort to destroy our public school system. There is a manufactured narrative against public schools. You'll see like stand-up comedians and people online comments, things like, oh, you are stupid. You must have gone to a public school. But I work in the schools, and what I see is dedicated teachers who are working hard for less of a salary. They're really trying their best. Problem is that St. Louis public schools are underfunded, and you have a situation where poverty is concentrated in St. Louis public schools. So I think, the solution is to fix the schools that we have, the public schools that we have, and stop sending money to these charter schools, which is not solving any of the problems in the schools. It has not solved any of the public schools and will not solve the problems that we have in our schools. And I'm going to leave it right there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Digger, for your comments. Thank you. Margaret Lang, you have something in the chat. Do you want to share? Can she share?
Okay. Sorry. All I said was, well, two comments. One is that democracy depends on public education, and we teach people how to think, not how to just turn on our favorite silo channel of far right or whatever messages that are not only almost, hateful, but fear mongering and all that horrible stuff. But also important is the far right has focused in on school boards. They send out messages to each other to mob school board meetings, and they're violent, they're angry, they scream, they're aggressive. And like Dr. Martin Luther King said, or whatever, I don't know what I'm not going to quote him, but you can't change the world with violence. I know that's not quite right, but it must be done with love, with kindness, with compassion. And whatever we do, we must not imitate the tactics of the far right by being violent and aggressive. That's all I have to say. I mean, showing up for school board meetings to counter these guys could be dangerous. You could get shot that way. I would not doubt it for a minute. So we don't want to confront all these people that have focused on. They're going into the most minute, I don't know. Yeah.
Your 2 minutes are up. I'm
okay.
Sorry.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your comments. Barbara, did you have a comment? You had your hand up.
Let's see. I had a question, and I didn't want to type it. I was feeling lazy. And maybe it should go to Susan. I'm not sure, maybe Donna. I know that charter schools have to have an educational sponsor. And so in my mind, I've noted that it's been universities or colleges. And now St. Louis City Public Schools is becoming the sponsor, which I don't quite understand how that works. And then my other question is, if that is the case, one of our concerns about charters is it's draining money away from public institutions. So if St. Louis City schools become a sponsor of a charter school, does that change that scenario at all about the money leaving our public education? So maybe Susan, I think, had her hand up about that.
Yeah, Donna may want to chime in too, but when the law that allows charter schools to exist was created in 1998, Senate Bill 781 that year, they allowed school districts to, well, either Kansas City or St. Louis Public to sponsor charter schools. And the district did at one point in the early years sponsor a construction careers charter school, which did not do well and closed after its first 5 years. The reason that I've heard, and Donna may know more than it probably knows more than I do, that the district agreed to take on sponsorship of the, I believe it's the Confluence schools.
Yes.
Is that the feeling, well, first of all, the money goes, if they become the sponsor, then the money's going to go to them through the district. And so, so it's not financially necessarily harming the district, but the if the district is the sponsor, the district as the sponsor can decide to close the schools. And the fear was that if another sponsor took over, they would just keep them open forever. So the sponsor that they had just threw up their hands and quit. And so this is an opportunity for St. Louis Public to gain some control over those schools.
Thank you. That helps me understand. Donna, did you want to add, or anybody else?
Well, Susan is absolutely correct about the reason why St. Louis Public Schools chose to sponsor Confluence. I did vote against it because I just felt like the explanation wasn't sufficient for me, because when I heard Mr. Pollock say they have up to 4 years that they can play around, I'm thinking if you're doing really bad, then you need to change all of this tomorrow, because I don't think our students have time to waste in their educational life. So I'm really, now that it has happened, I'm really hoping for the best for those students who are currently in those schools. I know the schools are struggling. I do know people who currently teach there, and they said it's really bad. And so having had a child years and years and years ago that was in a charter school, he lost a whole year of his education at some unnamed charter school that was on Goodfellow. And so I know wasting one moment at a failing charter school can destroy a child for a long time. So no, I'm really taking a hard look at charter schools, and I'm really anxious to see how we're going to handle the citywide planning and charter schools. So I don't know exactly how that's going to turn out, but that's why I'm hoping people will really start coming out and participating, because this is not just for parents. This is for everybody, because it's going to affect everybody here in this city.
Thank you. Gwen, you have
to.
I'm sorry, Gwen has her hand up. Gwen Cogshell, do you want to comment?
Yes, I wanted to say we found out something very interesting when we went to Jeff City. We met with the white parents from the south side of St. Louis, and we were from the north side. And we found out that when they introduced themselves, they told us where their children went to school. And they said their children went to Dewey, Mollenkrodt, Metro, McKinley. And that's the school that my granddaughter could not get into. My granddaughter traveled Europe, you know, all over Europe. She chose to go to Sodan Academy, and we'll be showing up at the school board to say that it's nothing international about Sodan anymore. But what we found out is that we were scared to death that the open enrollment would destroy the St. Louis public schools, because on the South Side, those parents are stabilized. Their kids been going to, gifted school since elementary school, but that's not the case. So I want to ask Ms. Jones, because over the COVID time, our children fell behind. And at Sodan, I don't know if there have been any assessment tests, or has there been any efforts to make sure that some kind of assessment test to find out where our children are and are they going to get the help that they need? I know people keep saying if we find the funding, but you got $161 million bond issue passed, and that money can go to, for that type of thing. But have we checked out, or is the school board doing anything to make sure that the children have been tested so we can know how to move forward?
Yes, and to respond to your question, a very good question. And I can tell you honestly, this is why I'm talking about the PTOs. All the schools that you name, they have strong PTOs. They raise money for their children, for their trips, all of that, and they pay for that. Those parents gather together. I kid you not. It's like a beaver kind of neighborhood. They come together. I look out and I don't see us. I don't see us coming out to support our children in droves. They come out and support them. That's the first issue right there. And that's why I keep saying PTO, PTO, PTO. Don't have one. We'll help you get one started. Contact the young lady that I gave you her name, Miss Gloria Nolan. We need PTOs and we need parents in them so they can help you with any issue that you're having in your school. And yes, the students are being tested. They just recently tested all the second graders in SLPS for gifted. But no, there are many tests that are being scheduled with our interim superintendent. She does understand that issue. So it's the first thing to plate. Yes, it is.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Anderson, you have a comment.
Yes, I just want to back up and piggyback on what is being said about what is needed to go forward in our district. We have to have parents. We need you parents. The district has done some things. They've made some mistakes in their leadership, in the way they put out educational programs and whatever. But the truth of the matter is exactly what Mrs. Jones said. We need parents. We need you to come out and say, no, you're not going to do this crazy crap anymore. We need for you to make decisions that are based on the educational benefits for our children. We need to stop making decisions based on politics and on money, and we need to make our decisions based on children. How can we further the education of our children? Yes, we know what to do. We know what to do. And there are not enough of us who are willing to say, this is what we're going to do. This is going to move forward the progress of our children. We need more leadership who will say, this is what we need to do for our children. Stop making decisions based on politics and money. And I'm going to be quiet before I get angry.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Dr. Kwanzaa, do you have a comment in the chat? Do you want to share?
Mr. Quindoza.
Dr. Quindoza, do you have a comment you'd like to speak? Okay, he's
no, I didn't have a comment at the time. No, I did not. But I did put it in the chat room. Some facts that are true. We have 12% math proficiency. We have 18% reading proficiency. We're basically bottom of the barrel all the time, every year. I worked in the district in 2007 as a counselor. I was the head football coach at NJROTC. I saw it firsthand. My eldest son, that was his senior year. I was his coach that year. Very nice. But I saw when we had no accreditation how the families felt, knowing that they had to go a different route in order for the graduating seniors, which from the football program, we had 18, the most in any time in the PHL, which is something I'm very proud of. Those young men, they worked their tails off. But the parents felt so much out of place and let down by the district because we had no accreditation. We had to go a different route in order for their transcripts to be accepted by the NCAA clearinghouse. And this has been an ear sore. Even as an elder in the church, I have been there in the trenches, 38 years strong, cleaning up the mess of something that has failed time and time again. And it's just time that things are different. We got to do better. We that say we have a stake in this district, we just have to do better. We have to be unified on all things and be accountable, transparent. This district needs good governance. This is some of the things that I have seen firsthand that we're lacking.
Thank you very much for your comment. I would like to ask Don Fitz to speak next, and then Paul Lehman. You're on mute, Don.
Okay, there, I'll sound a lot better now. Okay, so I want to talk about something that I don't think has really been touched on very much tonight. I grew up in Houston, Texas, and went to Houston public schools in the 1950s and 1960s. And the entire time that I went to elementary school, I never got there in any way other than walking in the neighborhood. The entire time I went to junior high school, or what's called middle school in St. Louis, I never got there any way other than riding a bicycle. I didn't know what it was like to ride in a car to school until I was in high school. And I think having those community schools is really important in pulling a community together, because especially my elementary school had activities that were part of and parcel of the neighborhood. People who didn't have any kids, they would come to the community events at the elementary school. And it was very, very important to pull the community together. And I want to point out that I do a lot of environmental work now, and I don't think anybody who calls himself an environmentalist could possibly support charter schools, because one of the things which adds to environmental pollution, there's nothing that is worse than the automobile. And as much as we can, we should be walking and riding bicycles, and that's what kids should do to be healthy, is to walk and ride a bicycle to school as much as possible. So I think that charters, in addition to not having charter schools, I think charter schools should be, if there are any, they should be taxed for how much unnecessary driving they're forcing children to do. I just think that community schools are a critical part of building strong neighborhoods.
Thank you very much, Don Fitz. Let's go to Paul Lehman, and then we'll go back to Miguel and Carla Alexander. Mr. Lehman, you have 2 minutes.
Hello, everyone. I'm from Fayette, Missouri, and I have connections to St. Louis through the Green Party. I wanted to answer a question that was raised earlier. How do we hold our school board members accountable? And the normal way is to elect people who claim to be friendly to our desires, and then they get on the board and do just the opposite. And that has happened in the Fayette School District in my county, the very same thing. And we have an election where the 3 that we elected the last time, we elected them so that they would get on the board and change the 4-day school week decision of the board and change it back to the 5-day school week. Well, they didn't do their job or what they said they would do. So now they are running unopposed, and we have no opportunity to vote against them. No one has stepped forward to run against them. I think the population has just given up in Howard County. But I was talking to some Republican representatives who were sponsoring a bill to do a recall or allow the recall of school board personnel. Of course, their agenda is to try to get rid of progressive school board members, but that could work the other way as well, to get those members on the board who have failed to honor their commitments. And but that bill that was proposed has not come up in this session. One that I propose is that we have an opportunity to have a referendum on school board decisions, not the members, but the decisions they make. And so far that's illegal. We can do that with state government, but we can't do that on the local level with school boards that get out of line.
Thank you for your comments. Our last commenters tonight are going to be Miguel and Carla Alexander. 2 minutes, please.
Thank you so much for giving us the floor again. This is exactly what we're talking about, what Mr. Fitz just commented on. Our neighborhood schools are being, like eliminated and walking to school again. So this is what I'm saying about what we have here in Jeff Vanderloo neighborhood where we stay is the trifecta. Dr. Quinones often talks about how community schools are important anchors of the neighborhood. And we have Dunbar Elementary School, which they closed. We had 141 students during a pandemic, and they opened a charter school just a mile from us, Atlas Charter School, without a hitch. So we have the last feeder school system. We want our children to be able to walk again. We want to save the district money. We have Dunbar Elementary School put in 7th to 8th grade back in Dunbar. That's the middle school element. Then we have the high school, Vashon, across the street, directly across the street. It's a park right there in Vashon High School. And then we have across the street, the William J. Harrison Education Center, St. Louis Community College. This is our last feeder school system in the St. Louis region and a rarity in the United States. So this is all our community is asking. But, due to politics, due to money, we have pushback, and the community is just not understanding why. So that's the part that we're fighting for, trying to get through the systemic injustices. And thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Carla. The panelist, Susan Turk, would you like to speak, please?
Yeah, I can't find the number right now, but there actually is a bill in the legislature this year that would give the people who live in a school district a vote on whether or not to allow a 4-day week to happen. And if that bill passed, then it would be, people would have a say on that. I wish I could find the number. It's not in front of me right now, but that's a possibility.
Thank you. Gwen, your hand is up.
I want to piggyback off of what Ms. Alexander said, because, everybody keeps, like to say St. Louis Public Schools is failing, but, it's not failing. We're not getting our resources. Our resources are being stripped. But to go back what she's talking about, my chiropractor, my gynecologist, my granddaughter's pediatrician, the Nashes, all of these people came from St. Louis Public Schools, but all of these people, my lawyer and everybody I deal with, I met them in elementary school. Most of my friends today, 90% of them, I met them in elementary school. And so what I'm saying is, it's not even about, I just don't understand why they don't understand the importance of keeping that community together. That Dunbar holds almost 500 students. You can take those kids from preschool, take them across the street, and they won't get lost in the shuffle because they'll walk back down the street to go to college. I mean, those are relationships that they will have forever. The people, and I'm just going to say this at the end, it was 9 young men on this street that should be the same age as my daughter. The ones up the street, they murdered each other. That's right. They murdered each other because the ones that lived in this neighborhood didn't know the ones in the other neighborhoods because they were all split up. We got 12 kids in these 2 blocks and none of them go to the same school. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And so that's why I wanted Dunbar to stay open, because of the relationships that I know and that bond that they can build and how strong that community can become if that happens. If it goes to a pre-K to 8 school, they can all go to school together for 12 years. You can't build a community better than that.
Thank you, Mr. Huck. Thank you, Gwen. So I want to say thank you to all the speakers, all the commenters, all the panelists. And this has been recorded, and there's a link in the chat. And again, there's an election on April the 14th. I encourage everyone to share the link to this presentation. A lot of amazing information was shared. PTOs are important. Jeff City's not for us. Vote for the board, hold the board accountable. It's best for the health of the students to walk to their local public school. It's best for the community. The students go through school together and know each other. And we'll have less violence. Thank you all very much.
Hey, Susan.
I want to say thank you all also. It was a great program. Thank you.
Great program. Listen, I want to talk to